Hey guys, it's Chad. It's time for weekly motivation, and I'm really excited this week because we're going to be talking about student motivation. I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes to log in, so come on in, give me a few likes, and hopefully we can get started here pretty soon. I'm actually really excited to talk about student motivation this week. A lot of times I'm talking about how to stay motivated as a teacher, but this week the focus I want to harp on is something that comes up in workshops all the time, and that is, how do we motivate the students that are falling asleep in our class? How do we motivate the students that don't seem to have much interest? How do we motivate those students that are really hard to reach or that other people can't reach? So I'm going to share 3 tips today to help you reach more of those students and motivate those students. And these are tips that I've used, I've shared with other educators, that I've seen work fantastic in the classroom. Because we all have that student that's in the back of the room and they have their head down. And no matter how much you try, it always seems like you just can't get through to them. So, the first way that you can motivate any student, and this is sort of like a universal solution to a lot of problems in the classroom, whether it's management or motivation, is build a relationship. Now, this is a very simple solution, but by building a relationship with your students, they're going to respect you, they're going to respect your classroom, and they're going to respect the learning that they're going through. A wonderful mentor I once had said that students don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So if you provide an environment, if you provide an atmosphere, and if you provide a relationship to your students that lets you know that you're not going to let them off the hook, you're going to hold them to high standards, you're going to believe in them, and you're going to always be there for them and care about their progress, they're going to work harder for you. And they always will if that relationship's there. I've seen some amazing teachers with amazing pedagogy and tactics and instructional ability fail because they didn't build a relationship with students. So building that relationship with mutual respect for students is something that is huge in motivating students. Jeff, great to see you, bud. The second thing is increasing student ownership. A lot of times a student's success or a student's failure sort of falls back on us as the teacher. And the reason this occurs is because everything that's designed in our classroom is teacher-centered. So we're the ones delivering the message, we're the ones assessing the work, we're the ones doing all of this stuff where when you can flip that around and increase student ownership and student accountability, a lot of times that motivation is going to come naturally. One amazing way that I like to flip this conversation, so let's say you have a student that just has their head down, they're not working. One really non-confrontational way, an easy way to motivate students is what I call the note drop technique. So the note drop technique is really simple. It's basically a small contract. I don't know if you guys can read this, but basically it says, I'm the student, and my teacher has tried to help me multiple times, and I'm still refusing to work. Then they have to sign right here on this contract. When they and so the way this works is you have now had the student completely own the choice that they're making not to work. So let me paint a picture of how this normally goes. You have the student, they have their head down. You walk up, and normally in a traditional situation, maybe you'll sort of try to redirect them. Maybe you'll do something like start a confrontation with them. And a lot of times this is how those big blow-ups and things happen. You start arguing about how the student's not working, or they forgot their book or their pencil or something like that, and your entire lesson's derailed. You can walk up without bothering a student for a minute, and you drop this on their desk. Just drop it on their desk. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to do anything. This note, the student will pick it up and they'll go, why'd you give me this? You can then easily explain to them, well, I'm your teacher, I care about your success, and I want you to be successful in my class and learn to the best of your ability. Then you can say, you have 2 choices. If you're not going to work, because I've tried to help you multiple times, I need you to sign and prove that you are going to own that decision. And if you don't want to do that, you can just get to work. If you leave it at that and you walk away, 99% of the time, I'm telling you, I've seen this work so many times. 99% of the time, the student's going to look at the note and they're going to go, and they're going to start working. Because you have done a fundamental thing here. You have shifted the ownership and the accountability of the choice not to work over to the student. And you've taken it off yourself. And that's a huge piece here. Anything you can do to increase ownership in your classroom, whether it's mastery learning, PBLs, more engaging activities, is going to increase student motivation to do better in your room. So the third thing that you can do to help motivate students is keeping them engaged by meeting them where they're at. A lot of times students will get disengaged or unmotivated because you're either going too fast and they get lost, or you're going too slow and they get bored. So that leads to disengagement, it leads to lack of motivation, and maybe you're also doing something like you're using the same types of activities, you're not really mixing it up a lot. So if you can keep your students engaged by allowing them to either work at their own pace or meet their needs via differentiation, that can help you keep them motivated. Kiza, the note drop is a fantastic strategy. The best part about that strategy, Kiza, is that you don't have to get into a confrontation with the student. It's completely, there's no confrontation to be had there. So because you aren't confronting the student, you aren't attacking the student, you're just forcing them to sort of own that decision. That ends up being a really effective strategy because you've now taken the ownership of that decision and turned it completely over onto the student. And you've also shown the student that you've done everything you can, you care about them, and this is a positive environment, but if they're going to make this choice, there's not a whole lot that you can do. So I'm glad you noticed, I'm glad you picked up on that strategy. I highly recommend it. It's really good. That's fantastic. Using Google Forms as a way to differentiate, that's awesome. And there's a lot of amazing features in Google Forms. So Kiza, thank you for contributing that. So, just sort of to recap here, the focus of this week was how do we motivate those students? And we work with a lot of amazing teachers, and this is a constant thing that is always coming up. And there's three ways that I recommend. The first is build your relationship. No student's going to work for you if they don't respect you and if you don't have a relationship with them. That is the easiest way to get through to any student, is build that relationship. Have 1,000 conversations about nothing. Learn as much as you can about them and try to find them in places that are not stressful academically. Talk to them in the hall, the cafeteria, outside of school if you can. That's going to help you build those relationships, which are going to pay you back in the classroom. The second thing, you have to increase ownership and accountability. As Kiza just mentioned, that's where things like this note drop come in. When you approach a student that's not working, don't be confrontational about it. Always approach the student as if you're assuming they were going to work. So instead of saying, I can't believe you're not working yet, or I told you to get working, you can... Kiza, I absolutely understand what you mean by that, and that's fantastic. Being honest with your students, being transparent is a very powerful tool. But like you're saying, knowing that they care because of that relationship is huge. That's where sort of this note drop comes in. Like, this is not a very confrontational thing. This is just you saying, this is my expectation. If you're going to make this choice, you have to own it. And it really avoids a lot of issues. And it's one of my favorite techniques that I share with almost every workshop that I do. And I've seen a lot of success. And a lot of teachers have solved really sort of standard issues that they have every day with just this. Now, one thing I will say about the note. This is a note that has sort of a negative connotation. You should also absolutely have notes that have positive connotations as well. So you might have a note that says you're not working today, but at the same time, you should also have a note that says you did awesome today. I'm going to acknowledge that. I know the notes seem a little bit maybe middle school or elementary, but students like to be acknowledged. And when you acknowledge hard work, they're going to do it more. So when you notice that student is doing hard work or working really hard or motivated, acknowledge that, build that up, and build that inside of them so that they're going to want to do that every single day. There's not a person on this world, whether they're an adult, student, administrator, or anything, that does not want to be acknowledged when they do hard work. So make sure you're reinforcing sort of your expectations when the work isn't there, but when it is there, make sure you're reinforcing that positive behavior as well. Make sure you're building them up and supporting them when they do what they're supposed to. The last thing is keep them engaged. Keep them engaged by meeting them where they are. Let them set the pace. Increase their ownership. Try to differentiate when you can so that they can access the content and the material of your classroom in the best way possible. Kiza, yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Yeah, so Kiza just said, and I don't know if everyone noticed, but she just said, you're not working yet approach. So Kiza, a really easy way to adjust that phrase is, I noticed you're not working. You were about to start though, right? So that's the exact same thing, but it has the assumption that the student is going to start working. So you're approaching the student in a much different way. So instead of saying, I know you're not working because you never work, which is like the negative connotation, the negative expectation, you can turn it around and say, hey, you haven't started yet. Were you about to get started? Because then the student sees that you were expecting them to get started. You're not attacking them. You're not assuming anything about them. And you're actually assuming that they're going to do the right thing. So as a teacher, always try to approach a student like assuming that they're going to do the right thing. And this is really hard sometimes because as teachers, we all have those students that do the same thing or the same negative behavior almost every single day. But every single day, if you approach that student, always assume that they're going to do the right thing. They will eventually pick up on that and that you're giving them these chances. And hopefully, eventually, they'll sort of turn around. But absolutely, keep them engaged by meeting their needs and just mixing up your curriculum. Don't let them get bored. So student motivation is a huge topic. If you have any other questions or want to know how you can engage students by sort of meeting them where they're at, thegridmethod.com has some fantastic resources. We also have a free course available and a Facebook group filled with amazing teachers like Kiza and some of the other amazing people on here that can help each other out. So we're all in this together. We're all trying to teach better every single week. So I'm hoping these tips helped you, and it will help you this week, motivate some of those unmotivated students, and more importantly, hopefully they'll help you teach better. So guys, stay awesome. Have an amazing week. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, direct message me, or hit me up on the Facebook group. Thank you so much, guys. Have a fantastic night. Stay awesome.